Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live on this Friday afternoon where we are. Maybe it's a Friday evening or even a Saturday morning where you are, wherever you are. We're glad you're here with us, and we did a good one for you this time. We got a great show. Second hour, Jimmy Aiken will be here. What are we doing with Jimmy? Open forum? Second hour? Yeah, so open forum, so you can call and ask whatever you want. And in the first hour, this hour, one of the great things that happens around here is when Rose Sweet comes in, and she's here. We're talking with Rose Sweet. You can find her at rosesweet.com. She's the author of many wonderful books and a fantastic speaker. And she'll even tell you a story of Rindersella if you want her to. And also you can find out, she does a lot of what's called life coaching and helping people with issues around marriage and divorce, and very diverse and talented person. When I start talking about you, I'm very impressed. Hi, Rose.
Well, thank you. You forgot that I could clean up this place like a housekeeper.
Is it a mess in here?
No, the studio, man.
We don't have any women around
you don't have any
anymore.
women here.
No, Marie left us, and Edgar came.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, like, do you think Edgar's going to... Because yesterday, Simone Riscala was in here, and she goes, "Merry Christmas." And I was like, what? And then I looked over, and I see there's a pile of Christmas stockings and jackets and a Christmas tree, and...
Yeah.
It's almost March.
It's
It's
totally,
a mess in here. It's a total
totally
disaster.
Embarrassing.
Yeah.
You know,
All right.
okay.
Well, thanks for sharing that online and around the world.
You know, you guys are real, and this is real life, real Catholicism.
We're a mess,
we
though. We're a real mess. Like,
It
now
is.
that you've said it, it's you know what though? We got the Home Depot bucket out of here. We don't have the bucket of spackle over there. That was months that we had the bucket of spackle, and that's gone. So
Well, this kind of segues into our topic for today. You know, when things are a mess, and
good for you, Rose.
It's kind of
you'll handle the segues today.
I know.
Okay,
I know.
good. Go ahead.
Our title today is "Marriage Without Works is Dead."
That sounds like something from the Bible.
It does.
I think it comes from the book of James.
We know from the book of James that James says that faith without works is dead, that you can't just say with your mouth, yes, I married this person, and now we're all done and I can go fishing.
Right.
You got to start the hard work of the marriage, of the relationship.
And one of the things you pointed out to me when we talked about having this as the topic is that the Catechism of the Catholic Church is loaded with wisdom on marriage. And I hadn't really kind of put that together. I mean, I knew it was there, but I hadn't thought, well, there's a resource you can go to on marriage.
And you know what I'd love to do in this first few minutes, if you don't mind, is just read a few little snippets of the Catechism of the Catholic Church on marriage. It's really,
Rose,
really beautiful.
I've known you long enough to know you're going to do it whether I mind or not.
I know, but I'm trying to be polite.
It was very
Si.
nice of you to
Come
say that, but you
on.
know you're going to do it. So,
Well,
and I don't mind. I'm very
Don't
happy.
undermine my humility. Okay? Do you hear me?
I apologize. Yes.
And I wouldn't
I
slap
don't
you
even know what
today
that
because
means,
you
but-
told me you're coming down with a cold, so I can't touch you
I know.
today.
I
so.
didn't even want to be in the studio with you because I was afraid I'd give you a cold. But you're like brave. You're like, you're like, well, I don't care. We're doing this for the Lord. Let's go.
Okay,
Sit down.
you know what?
Boom.
This is what marriage takes. You know, instead of running away, oh, I have a sore throat, and then, withdrawing, you stand in there with your spouse through thick and thin. So
All right.
there you go.
Missy wouldn't be in here with me if she knew I had a cold. She'd be
Well,
like-
that's a different thing. She really is married to you. So.
All right. So give us some catechism on marriage. Thank you, Rose.
Okay, for those of you who are studying the Catechism, go to section 16, the 1600s, paragraph 1600. 1601 says, and I love this, the matrimonial covenant by which a man and woman establish between themselves a partnership of the whole of life is by its nature ordered toward the good of the spouses and the procreation and education of children. But sometimes
There's so much in that one sentence.
It is.
I mean, even that definition, a partnership of the whole of life, is beautiful.
Well, and I've run into a lot of people in my marriage and divorce and recovery ministries that they said, look, a marriage is okay if you promise not to cheat on the person and you're open to children and you're not going to get a divorce. And they really don't think that you have to be that loving, that attentive, that present, that affirming or supportive of your spouse. If your spouse isn't happy,
Their problem?
It's their problem.
Uh-huh.
That they've fulfilled.
That doesn't sound like a partnership of the whole of life.
That's right. Or
Yeah.
ordered toward the good of the spouses.
Mm-hmm.
What's good for my husband? What's good for my wife?
Yeah.
We don't. When do we really stop and think about that?
Not from in my case, not the first 25 years of marriage, but since then I've been doing better.
Well, right.
I mean, it kind of finally dawned on me that I was supposed to be doing
okay,
that.
and that's the whole.
25 is too many. 20. Let's say 20.
Poor Missy.
Well, you know that what you could have said, poor Missy, a lot of years of our marriage. That's true. I've told you that before.
I know you have, and I love that you're vulnerable and open about that, and that's the hope that we have. That it's not you're in a difficult marriage, it is not necessarily the end. It's not the end. We have so much hope.
Yes.
Listen to this, 1608. Without God's help, man and woman cannot achieve this union for which God created them.
Right.
Okay, here's another one I love, 1603. The well-being of the individual person and of both human and Christian society is closely bound up with a healthy state of conjugal and family life.
Yeah.
So again, to consider that in this marriage, I need to have well-being. I need the other person to will my good. That's not an unreasonable demand, and we'll get to that in a minute. But here we go. Here's the downside. 1607. 1606. And this is the Catechism.
Yeah, this is the Catechism of the Catholic Church.
Their
talking about marriage.
union has always been threatened by discord, a spirit of domination, infidelity, jealousy, and conflicts that can escalate into hatred and separation, and I'm going to add divorce. But again, that does not need to be the end. God gives us everything that we need. When God says, love your enemies, sometimes he's talking about your spouse.
Right.
And right after that verse, he says, be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. And God gives us the graces we need to go toward that perfection. So here's another one I love, these great words, 1611. The books of Ruth and Tobit bear moving witness to an elevated sense of marriage and to here's the phrase I love, fidelity and tenderness of spouses.
Isn't that funny that like you said, fidelity is kind of the minimum. It's not you haven't done your full work of marriage. I mean, you've done a good thing, but you haven't done, it's kind of a necessary but not sufficient thing.
So, yes, if you were going to build your beautiful spouse a house, and you would, pour the concrete, lay the foundation, put in the plumbing and electric, and then say, okay, get your sleeping bag, we're done.
Yeah.
No, there's still work to do. So
Right.
the fidelity is part of the foundation, but there is that work and that building. And I just love the words like tenderness, good of the spouses. Okay, 1643. Conjugal love involves a totality in which all the elements of the person enter, appeal of the body and instinct, power of feeling, so that means emotions are important.
Yeah.
They're not everything, but they're important, and affectivity, aspiration of the spirit and of the will. It aims at a deeply personal unity. 1648. Now we're really getting to the nitty-gritty. It can seem difficult, even impossible, to bind oneself for life to another human being.
Yeah. And I suppose that one, 1648, it puts me in mind of when the 1608 one you said, without God's help, man and woman cannot achieve it. That's why it seems impossible, because you can't do it without
That's
God.
right. That's right. And our natural default from our sin nature is to try to do it ourselves because we, at some level, we don't really trust God to know us and have our good in mind. At least his definition of our good is usually different than our definition.
Right.
So we don't trust. Only when our face hits the pavement and we're in enough pain, when we look up and we cry out and we say, Lord, I'm in a mess, help me. That's when powerful graces in your marriage can come.
Right. Amen, sister. If you want to talk with Rose, we got a little more catechism to cover, but if you want to talk with Rose about the work of marriage, because Rose's theme today is marriage without works is dead, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. And the Catholic Church has a great deal of wisdom that comes from the person of Jesus and regarding marriage, but you do not have to be Catholic if you want to call and take advantage of that wisdom by talking with Rose. 888-318-7884. All right, go on, Rose.
Okay,
Continue.
so let's talk. There's another part in this section, offenses against the dignity of marriage. Let me say that again, offenses against the dignity of marriage. And that's in the 2300 section of the Catechism. It starts at 2380.
Okay.
This is pretty clear. adultery.
Yeah.
That's a big bad thing against marriage. But we don't have to necessarily end up in the sack with somebody to commit adultery. It begins much, much earlier. And again, Jesus himself addressed this. It begins in the discontent, in the sense of entitlement. I'm not getting what I want in my marriage. I need this. I have to have it. God doesn't understand really, or at least I hope he's not looking. And off we go into this little, and we begin to abandon our spouses much earlier than any physical act of adultery.
Yes, yeah, right. So there's a kind of, well, I mean, even Jesus, I guess, that we could interpret his words in the Sermon on the Mount to mean that the infidelity starts in the heart. It doesn't start physically.
Right, right. And it's a response to our sin nature that keeps pulling us the wrong way.
Right.
But we have grace. We have a powerful God who sees and knows and loves and understands us and says, look, if you want help, I can get you help.
And that is the truth, Rose. That is the truth, yeah. I mean, there's just millions of people married in the grace of Jesus who know he does, in fact, help. He doesn't leave us floundering.
So let's talk about this as far as the aspect of work. And I'm going to name somebody who told me before I left home today I shouldn't use his name, but I'm just referring to this general person that I happen to be married to.
You just happened to be. You said it like it was an accident that the two of you got married.
It was. I couldn't help myself.
Oh, I see that. Yeah, I understand that. Right.
In the beginning, when we had our first fight, he blurted out what I will never forget. Why does marriage have to be so hard? It shouldn't be this hard. It should be easy.
Oh, I've said that many times.
Yeah.
I've said that. Yeah, foolishly said that.
Really?
Right. Yeah.
Should be
Really,
easy.
Who promised that?
Right.
Yeah.
So we have this romanticized version of what marriage should be that we, see from movies and wherever else we get it. And I think it's just part of the human desire not to have to work.
Yeah. But even if you don't say marriage should be easy, it's very common to say it shouldn't be this hard. Like when marriage when it's really working on you, and requiring something of you, it really does feel like it shouldn't be this hard. Something is wrong.
So in my own case, and I will talk about this, is you can look at the other person all day long, and you might be right. Maybe it is their fault.
Yeah.
But you have work to do in that you don't keep your focus over there and hang on to it so tightly that you slip into arrogance and pride and entitlement and bitterness and even revenge.
You mean I wasn't supposed to do those things? These are the don't do's?
I said poor Missy at the beginning of the show.
No,
and
I'm just clarifying which list we're on. We're on the don't do list. Right
we're on
now.
the don't do list.
Yeah.
And again, let's say my husband did something horrible and I was completely in the right and he was completely in the wrong.
Yeah.
I still have work to do in marriage. I have the work of not responding to that in a sinful manner, a prideful manner, a focused on it and use it to control manner, which is what we do. And we sometimes think that when we're right and they're wrong, the work is all theirs. They got to change.
Yeah.
But this is the iron sharpening iron thing in marriage that I really realize. This is where my sanctity comes from when I have to bear something that's difficult or unjust or frustrating or deeply, deeply painful or even violating.
Yeah.
I have my work to do in that. I have to know how to respond in a way that is true to the dignity of my own person and is in line with the will of God, and that takes work.
You know what I'm hearing, Rose? It's not enough to be the better person in marriage. We have to be Christ to one another. And that means, because Christ had no fault. He's not at fault for any of the things that befell him at our hands.
Right.
So
Right.
there's the model.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And the Catholic Church in her teachings, and especially in the Catechism, we use Christ as a model. We look to Christ as a model. We look to Scripture. In the Catechism, and I don't know how many people are really do a deep dive into it, but there are the relevant Scripture references at the bottom of every page. We didn't just like pull this out of the air.
Yeah, right.
You know, we always go back to Christ.
I got to do a break, and I feel like we only got to one offense against marriage. We got to adultery.
We're going to get...
You have more offenses?
Oh, we got lots more.
There are folks on the line ready to talk with Rose, but if you'd like to talk about marriage, maybe you have something, it doesn't have to be a question, maybe it's something you'd like to contribute or in getting a conversation with Rose, or if you have a question or a challenge that you want to share with Rose and get some help, 888-318-7884.
Catch Catholic Answers live anytime at Catholic.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
The destination for great Catholic audio programming is EWTN Podcast Central, featuring the best of EWTN radio, as well as faith-filled podcasts from our friends and affiliates across the nation, all in one place, all free. If it's central to the faith, you can find it on EWTN Podcast Central. It's like podcast heaven. Visit EWTN.com/radio/podcasts today.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Rose Sweet is our guest. One thing we haven't mentioned a whole lot, but Lent is starting next Wednesday. It starts on Ash Wednesday, so get your ashes on Wednesday. And we got a great little book for you for Lent, one full of beautiful meditations. It's called The Heart of the Gospel. It's about the Sermon on the Mount itself that we've already mentioned. It's about the Beatitudes and how those are the heart of the gospel, and it's on sale right now, 20% off your copy of The Heart of the Gospel today at shop.catholic.com. You can get bulk. Maybe it's something you want to share with your group, your study group, your class, your RCIA group, your Bible study, whatever. You can get them in bulk for $3 a copy. And everything that Father Sebastian writes is just beautiful, and this is a beautiful meditation on the heart of the gospel, the Beatitudes. Get 20% off by using the word blessed when you check out at shop.catholic.com, or get them in bulk for $3 a copy at shop.catholic.com. Rose Sweet, her theme today is marriage without works is dead. And you gave us this beautiful kind of litany of the beauties of marriage and the challenges of marriage that's in the 1600s section of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And now you're in the 2300s sections, the 2300s section on the offenses against the dignity of the marriage. So I want you to finish that before we go to calls.
Okay, good. Thank you. We talked about adultery, and we talked about the work that's necessary that when adultery starts in the mind and the heart before it gets down the road to do that work of correction. The next one is very sensitive. It's incest, but this is in the Catechism. And I have learned from working with so many people that you don't have to, you can violate the marriage. You don't have to be sexually involved with other family members. You can be emotionally involved. And this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Here's a couple, and they're not getting along. They're having repeated struggles, and it's very difficult, and one of them for sure is getting just worn down to the nub. The easiest thing to do is to push the spouse away and turn their affection and their attention to the children.
Yeah.
And in a certain sense, they replace the spouse, that place in their heart where the spouse belongs, with the children.
Yep.
And that's a violation against marriage. But, and the reason we do this is because it's easier. And this, I want to tie in the theme of work again. It takes work to go, oh man, I'd rather be with the kids than that stupid idiot, right?
Yeah.
That's a red flag and a signal, oh, I got work to do.
Yeah.
I got work to do.
But the one I've heard you talk about before is mom. You know, staying connected to mom is a kind of I mean, not sexually incestuous, but
Emotionally.
Yeah,
yes,
you
in
have
the
to turn
marriage.
away from the parent, your own parents, to the spouse.
Yes,
Fully.
like when we're talking about annulment, and we decide that at the time of the wedding, let's use a young man, for instance, that was really tied to his mother's apron string still, deeply and emotionally, and his new bride never felt number one. She never was number one. That mom always, she got to win out whenever there was an issue, and so he chose mom first.
Yeah.
So yeah,
The bond is that's mitigating against the marriage bond because the other bond is not healthy. The other bond has to be.
Well, right, and
Yeah.
here's the thing: you can't form a marriage bond if there's something already in the way blocking it. And the church
yeah.
uses the word impediment, and so that over attachment, that inordinate attachment to mom, impedes that marriage bond from coming into being.
All right, you got a few more offenses against the dignity of marriage, and
Okay.
I do want to get these callers on with you.
Okay. Cohabitation.
Yeah, nobody believes it anymore. What's wrong with people? Why don't we?
Well,
I'm not saying nobody believes it, but there's I shouldn't have said it that way, but I mean that it was kind of hyperbolic the way I said it, but there's a lot of cohabitation.
There is, and you know what? We've learned to settle for it, but it's a violation against the dignity of everything that we deserve and we need in marriage. We were created for that total gift of self, and we're getting half or less, or whatever. And we settle for it because we're afraid to do the hard work of breaking up, finding somebody else, or whatever it is, going to get therapy.
I don't believe a piece of paper makes a difference, Rose.
I know you do.
What about people who say that? I don't believe a piece of paper makes a difference.
I say that may be true for you. But
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with a piece of paper.
No,
it's got to do with what are you doing? Have you given your whole life to this person, or are you still reserving?
It's about, and this is a word we're using today, the dignity of the human person, and entering into a relationship where you are ordered to the good of that person, the total good, the total good. Okay, cohabitation. Here's another one right in the catechism. An offense against the dignity of marriage: inability to make long-term commitments.
Yeah.
The forever bachelor or bachelorette.
Yeah. Even in marriage, some people never make the long-term commitment.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And then trial marriages. So I say here's two things to remember, and I try to live this myself the best I can. If you are triggered, if you're feeling irritated, anxious, resentful, bitter, exhausted, worn out, whatever, check in with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then go get help. And then when you go get help, make the changes that you're supposed to make. So check in, get help, make changes. That's the work of any good relationship.
Marriage without works is dead. That's Rose's theme for today. Your call is welcome. We've got several callers to get to, but there's a couple lines open. 888-318-7884. I think I'm going to start with Ann in Shiloh, Illinois, listening on the Covenant Catholic Radio Network. Ann, we're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Rose Sweet.
Hi, I'm 59 and I've never been married.
Okay.
Hi,
And
Ann.
I met this guy. Hi, did you hear me? I'm 59
Yes.
and I've never been married, and I met this guy Monday. His name's Dave, and he plays the guitar. And all of a sudden I want to get married.
And what do you need? Do you need some advice today?
Yes.
Okay, here it is. First of all, thank God for the delightful, delicious stirring of your heart. It's beautiful and it's good. But you have to do some work first. I want you to go get a list, make a piece of paper and make a detailed list, give it thought and prayer, and make a list of everything that you want in a spouse. Everything. Physically, emotionally, financially, intellectually, everything that you can think of. Just have fun with this and write everything down. Then make another list of everything you will not tolerate, you can't stand. Then put those lists in order. Which ones are most important to you? And then this is a beginning place for you to begin discernment with Dave as you move forward, and follow the teachings and the advice of the Catholic Church. She's here to love you and protect you. But make those lists, and then maybe at some point share them with Dave and ask him what he wants. That's a really good place to start.
What do you think, Ann?
I don't think he's Catholic.
Do you want a Catholic husband?
Well, no. He doesn't have to be Catholic, but he sings and he plays the guitar, and I love music.
That's great. Then you could go to a bar on Friday night and listen to a great guy who plays guitar. But marriage is hard work, and it requires a maturity level of somebody beyond guitar playing and handsome looks to know how to see you and to love you as you were made to be loved. Otherwise, you're doomed for disaster.
Ann, I can see right now that we've reached we have to go to this hard break, but thank you very, very much for the call. Why don't we, if Ann wants it, let's send her a 20 Answers Marriage. We have a little booklet, 20 Answers Marriage. I'd love to send it to
Good
Ann
idea.
if she'd like it. But Ann, thank you for starting us off. Very much appreciate that call. And now the lines all lighten up. So we got lots of callers to come. Marriage without works is dead. That's the topic for this hour. Right back with more Rose Sweet. What if the voice of your deepest doubts about Catholicism rose up in the form of a human being and challenged you to defend your most foundational beliefs? That's the task apologist Trent Horn took upon himself in his new book, Devil's Advocate, a dialogue with his own best objections against the faith that he professes and defends. You can stand up against your doubts, and Trent will show you how. Pick up your copy of Devil's Advocate today at shop.catholic.com or at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Want to know more about the origins of the Catholic Church? Joe Heschmeyer explores the beginnings of Christianity in The Early Church Was the Catholic Church. Joe digs deep into the words and actions of those who lived right after the apostles to refute anti-Catholic claims of how the faith was lived back then. Order your copy of The Early Church Was the Catholic Church today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
As a child, the great theologian Thomas Aquinas asked, "What is God?" Best-selling author Kevin Vost's new book follows the mature thought of Aquinas in answering that question. In clear and approachable fashion, What is God examines God's attributes and considers questions about him that have vexed mankind for centuries. Order your copy of What is God today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Tomorrow on More to Life, the life you were meant to live.
We'll look at how the theology of the body can help you live a more abundant life.
That's tomorrow on More to Life, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central on EWTN Radio.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We can never get any peace and quiet in the studio when Rose is here because everybody's got to come in at the breaks and visit with Rose. You're very popular.
It's so fun. I love everybody here.
Donna came in and visited.
Because we're going to the Holy Land together.
Yeah, she's going on Donna, our director of marketing, she and her husband are going with you to the Holy Land on your pilgrimage.
In November.
I heard it's already sold out,
It's totally sold out, and we have a big old long waiting list.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh.
We'll go again
Congratulations.
another time. Thank you.
No, I'll just do I'm now doing the Rose's Leftovers tour. If you can't get on Rose's tour, I'm going to think of somewhere to go.
I like that.
Yeah. You need to give us all the people on your waiting list.
The California missions.
We thought of doing the California missions, but you know what they had that ruined it for us?
What?
A pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
They went and had a pandemic.
Well, let's go. Let's revisit that.
888-318-7884 is the number. We're talking about marriage with Rose Sweet. You can find out all about what Rose does at rosesweet.com. But Rose has written a series of beautiful books for women. Give us a couple of titles of the books.
A Catholic Woman's Guide to Happiness.
Yep.
A Catholic Woman's Guide to Relationships. A Catholic Woman's Guide to Romance.
And I think you did a very smart thing, or your publisher did. I don't know which one of you. You made them like pretty, beautiful little snacks. They're not just books; they're beautiful objects.
I did
these
that.
Oh, that was your thing.
Yeah.
That was very smart.
Because we women like cute little things we can put in our purse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Men like cute little things too, but not that we don't carry a purse.
Okay, let's get back to the callers.
888-318-7884. Mike in Boston, Massachusetts, listening on 1060 AM. Go ahead, Mike, with your question for Rose.
Hi there. I just want to thank you so much for this topic, and it's just really providential in my life. I was married outside the church for 17 years, and very difficult when I had my reversion to the faith and married to someone who wasn't in the faith, and knowing the church's teaching. But I, for the first time, I went to a Catholic marriage retreat, which I had never heard of one before, and it's Divine Intimacy in Marriage, run by Dan and Stephanie Burke.
Love them.
And it was.
Oh, you know them.
Glorious beyond. I mean, I the teaching that I never knew.
Yeah.
It just touched my heart, touched my wife's heart, and that people don't. It's sad for me that I never knew it, and it's sad for me that other people don't understand that we put God first in our marriage. If we put God first in our marriage, everything else is on solid ground, and we free to love unconditionally.
Beautifully said,
and
Mike.
that was kind of the gist of the retreat, but there was so much more.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Dan and Stephanie Burke do a beautiful job of incorporating the depth and riches of our Catholic teaching into everyday life. And you're right, Mike. If we as the individual human person have God at the center of our mind and heart, we're going to succeed in difficult relationships, be it a marriage or a parent-child relationship or a boss-employee, any relationship. Thank you for that.
Dan Burke, I know Dan Burke. I just put it together.
Yeah.
He's at the Avila Institute.
Yeah, Avila Institute, spiritualdirection.com.
Yeah.
Beautiful work.
And he wrote a book about Saint Therese.
Yes, he's got a lot
Teresa
of lot of books.
Oh,
yeah.
Mike, I'm so glad you called and shared that with us. Thank you very, very much. It is true that the teaching of, we say the Catholic teaching, but I want to stress that the Catholic teaching is Christ's teaching on marriage,
Yes.
and he had a lot to say about marriage, and he lived by example. How even though he was not married himself, he lived by example. How to be fruitful in all things, including marriage. So thank you, Mike. It is a beautiful teaching, and thank you for those very good and kind and helpful comments.
Before we go to the next caller, how beautiful that Mike said for 17 years it was difficult.
Yeah.
And look, you never give up hope.
No.
And then one day God goes, okay, I'm sending you to a retreat. And all of a sudden things change and they get goosebumps and they're off on a different path.
Right. And how many times have we heard of the husband, the wife, or the couple in total who are like, I wasn't really sure about this Catholic retreat. I didn't really want to do a marriage encounter or whatever the retreat was they did. And then the life, it's like the spirit comes into the thing. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Richard in North Dakota, listening on Ave Maria Radio. You are next. Richard, go ahead with your question for Rose.
Yeah, thank you very much for this. It's like, I know this is Marriage Week, and I don't know, I've been having plenty of difficulties with my marriage, so I appreciate what you're doing. And, well, thank you, but I know it's part of my calling. I heard it really kind of spoke to me, like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just give up? No. But I also need to figure out how to move forward, and I feel like I'm kind of stuck in a rut. I think over the course of years that my wife has probably just gotten tired of me and how I interact with her, and she has probably given the love that she and I are supposed to have to my kids. Mm-hmm. And I just want to know how to figure out how do I get a pathway back.
A pathway back. Well, very well asked. Yep.
Yeah,
Rose?
Richard, my heart goes out to both of you, all of you. This is very difficult, but it's more common than we realize. If you had a toothache, where would you go to get it fixed?
Well, to the dentist, probably.
And if your engine block was ready to explode, where would you go to get your car fixed?
Well, probably to a dealership or to a buddy that knows how to fix it.
Yeah, so you go to an expert who is familiar with the problem and can give you the plan for repair. And we're so reticent to go to therapists, counselors, or coaches because we have to bear our own ugly parts of ourselves. But that's what you have to do to move forward is go get some professional help, not necessarily to fix her, but to start first to work on yourself so that you are on firm foundation as you tackle this problem in your marriage. You need a plan. Scripture says without a plan, the people perish. So you can't just try it one day or 1 week. You have to have a nice, clear plan, and an expert can help you with that. First of all,
and how do I find a good expert then?
Well, you're talking to one. I bring our beautiful Catholic anthropology and teachings into my coaching, but let me go past that. Your wife, at some point, decided that you weren't enough. Okay. Now, instead of focusing on that, you want to look inward and say, where am I in life? Who am I? What am I giving to my wife and not giving to my wife? What do I want? And you begin with taking an inventory of your own self and getting help with that. And then you learn how to approach her and say, honey, something to this effect. I realize I have failed you in many ways. And I feel like you've turned a lot of the attention to the kids. And I totally get that. But I want to work on us. Are you open to that? Now, she might say, no, go away, I hate you. She might say yes, but then it doesn't, at this point, it doesn't matter how she responds. You want to know what your part is in it and how you can move forward to help her come back to the place where I know you both want to be. But you need an expert help. Does that make sense?
I agree. It does. So how can I get in contact with you? I think I heard your website or...
rosesweet.com. Just send me an email and I will spend some time with you and give you a little more information and some of the options that you have. Some good Catholic psychotherapists if you need that. Just reach out.
Richard, thank you. Thank you very, very much. So rosesweet.com.
Yes.
Rose@rosesweet.com.
Yes, that's my email.
And one thing that I have... A lot of people have been saying, like Richard is in North Dakota, so that's a lot of rural space up there. I don't know if he's in a more urban or rural space, but a lot of people have been telling me, and I wonder how you feel about this, that this new Zoom culture that we have is actually really good for people looking for therapy. That it's actually a good environment for therapy. It's not for everybody, I'm sure, but has that been your experience?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't like Zoom when it first came out. It's not as personal, especially when with COVID. And I like to be, if I would go out speaking somewhere, I like to see the people and touch the people, and I couldn't do that. But Zoom was better than a phone call. And there is something about at least seeing the person's expressions and the Zoom interaction that you can form a feeling of safety and trust and love and help with that. And so 90% of my clients are over Zoom. And that frees me to be able to work all around the world.
Right, yeah.
Right.
And I think there's some part of us that might go, well, maybe too much is lost in that. But from what I'm hearing from friends who are psychologists or therapists and also people who are is actually you don't lose so much. It's quite helpful.
I agree. And here's the other benefit. You don't have to get dressed to go to the therapist's office. You can just be in the comfort of your home, and you don't have to travel. You don't.
Right.
There's a lot of benefits to it, a lot of practical benefits.
Richard, thank you very much. I hope you will get in touch with Rose because I can testify to you there is hope. There's hope in marriages that are struggling. I'm going to go to Jason in Pennsylvania now, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Jason, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Rose.
Good evening. So I've been married, unfortunately, multiple times. I'm one of those guys that kind of falls in love really easily, and I just don't think about it. But I've had people come and tell me, that I'm continually in a state of sin because of my previous marriages, and I'm not Catholic. I'm actually Anglo-Catholic or Anglican Catholic, and just something that's always been, bothering me on my mind that, hey, you're living in adultery, that, what do I do? I mean,
Jason,
what should I think?
Yeah, thank you for calling in. You know, the good thing is that you have a deep and beautiful natural desire for marriage. The bad thing is sometimes you probably checked your brain at the door, like I did. I also have been married multiple times, and it's still shameful in a certain sense for me to have to say that out loud. But I was running my own life without asking God's help or direction. And when you come to a place of enough pain and you say, okay, Lord, I'm done. I want to follow you now. He will listen to that, answer that prayer, and give you what you need, and where you just trust him. So are you worried about God's forgiving you?
I mean, I've talked to somebody and she said, they use scripture where Jesus says that, or the scripture that says that, I know God forgives, but then people are saying, well, your other spouses are still alive, and so you're committing adultery because of your present marriage. And I'll never understand the beauty and extent of God's forgiveness and grace, but I just feel like I get beat up over it sometimes.
Yeah, I understand that. That happens in every church because people are afraid that people who are in a sinful state and are not changing their ways are going to bring everybody down for some reason. If you're not Catholic, you are not bound by the rules that Catholics are to live by. And our rules are, and that we get from Christ, is that unless there was a legitimate reason for separation or divorce, the marriage bond to those prior people still exists and must be upheld and honored. You're not held to that. I don't believe in your Anglo-Catholic denomination. You have to go check with one of your priests or pastors on what your denomination teaches, okay? And get expert help. Go talk. Don't just listen to all the other people in the pews, because you'll get real confused and real shamed and put down. Go to a loving, wise expert in your church. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, it kind of took me a lot. I realized that there's thousands and thousands of people listening and just putting it out there like that. But I'll be the first person to admit that, hey, I'm probably the chief of sinners. I'm probably,
Well, that is a step in the Christian life when we realize that about ourselves.
Right. But never lose. Here's what I love as being Catholic. We always hold different truths all at the same time with tension. So you may be the biggest sinner in the world, but you are also a beloved son of the high God, and he holds you in as the apple of his eye, and you are a sinner. So that's the reality, that that's the beginning of sanity, when you can remember those two things.
Jason, I do have to go to the break. I don't know, as you said, you're an Anglo-Catholic. If you would like, we have a little book called Divorce and Remarriage. If you'd like that, it'll give the Catholic perspective. We're happy to share it with you, but it's entirely up to you. Just hang on the line if you would like 20 Answers, Divorce and Remarriage, that at least help you think through it the way that Catholics think through it, which is, I'm sure, not so dissimilar from the way many of our Christian brothers and sisters think about it. So you're welcome to that if you'd like it. I have to take this break. We'll be right back with more calls for Rose as we talk about what I think is a very clever title Rose came up with. Marriage Without Works is Dead. It gives us a great chance to talk about many, many issues in marriage. If you'd like to get on with Rose, we'll do our very best. 888-318-7884.
This is Archbishop Paul Coakley, the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Live.
Do you love praying for people? Have you ever wanted to use your gift of prayer to share Jesus with others and build up the body of Christ? Start a public prayer station with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Listen to people's needs, pray with them, or invite them to meet you at church. St. Paul Street Evangelization can help you get started. Find out how at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
One of the reasons we should go to Mass is because it is the food of the saints that we receive. And for the saints, they understood rightly that the time after Holy Communion, that those moments are the most precious moments of our lives.
The Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, live from the EWTN Chapel, every morning, 8 Eastern, on EWTN Radio and Television.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Lots of folks on the line for Rose. I do want to say one thing because, Rose, you mentioned getting therapy to an earlier caller, Richard. And one mistake that I made, and I just want to add, you can very quickly dispose of this with whatever your answer is. I don't want you to spend a lot of time on it, but spiritualizing problems that were psychological, that needed, do you see what I'm saying? That
yes.
Try to pray through it, try to sacrament your way through it, all of which is good. I'm not rejecting any of that, but some of it, instead of doing that and doing the other work that my marriage needed, I did it in place of that. And I really do regret having done that.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because that's another faith without works thing. It's a way of hiding.
Right.
It's an escapism into your religion.
Yeah.
So that you don't have to do the practical work. It's a form of cowardice. And I've been there myself.
One of my many forms, Rose.
Well, you know, I'm a coward too. There's things that I run away from too.
Sure,
But with God's grace, I go, wait a minute, go back, take care of business, do the hard work, because it's totally worth it.
Let's go to Bob in Houston, Texas, listening on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Bob, we're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Rose.
Well, first of all, I want to say what a terrific program this is.
It always is when Rose is here.
This is just wonderful. I mean, this is what the Catholic Church has needed to do for a long, long time.
I know.
And I'm just so happy to hear this. I mean,
thank you,
you
Bob.
are right on target. And so let me just go ahead and tell you, I came from a really sick family. And so the first time I got married in my mid-20s, I wasn't able to make it work. We had 2 children, and we went about 7 years, and I just crashed. And then I did get a lot of therapy, which really helped. It really helped. And I continued to go to church too. I guess I went about 19 years, and I wasn't going to get married again until I knew that I could make it work. And then finally, I reached that point, and at that time, I met a woman that it was very clear that that we were right on track to get married, and so after a month, I told her, I said, if we don't get some therapy, I said, I'm not going to be able to make the decision, And so she said, well, okay. So we started seeing a therapist, and I didn't care, because I told her, I said, I still have some rough edges to work out, and we also need to know where we can go if we have any trouble, because I was determined I was not gonna get divorced again. It just was not gonna happen, and so we did that, and sure enough, I was then able to commit, and we got married. And one of the things that I did was I got into a 12-step program, because I just knew I needed constant work, because our society tells us, like just what Walt Disney says, he says, you meet your prince or princess and you go off and you live happily ever after. Well, that's the biggest lie we've ever been told.
Bob, I'm going to let Rose respond real quick, because we're getting close to the end. But Rose, go ahead. You have a response to
Bob,
that?
thank you for calling in and giving your witness. This is you have so many good points, and I'm delighted that you called. And you reminded me of the Arthur Murray Dance Studios. It's like if you and a partner were going to enter a dance contest, you would go to an expert to take some lessons and get help. Nobody would bat an eye with that. So for you to get pre-marriage counseling or therapy, I think was fabulous. You recognizes that you wanted to do a good job. You wanted to have a beautiful dance with this beautiful partner, and you went and got dance lessons. So that's authentic love, and you were willing to do the work even before the marriage. That's awesome.
Bob, I am going to leave it there, because we've got more folks who want to talk with Rose, and time is fleeting this hour. Greg in Central Montana, listening on St. Joseph Radio. Greg, thank you very much for your call. Go ahead with your question for Rose.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call. I am 23 years old. and I've been dating my girlfriend for about 2 years now. We've been discussing marriage recently. And I know earlier in your discussion you were talking about how a lot of people are surprised by the amount of work that is required when it comes to marriage. So I was curious your thoughts on how I can start putting in work now so it's not just a surprise in the future, just down the line.
Well, she's a lucky young woman if you're already ready to do the work, Greg. So that's great. First of all, are you Catholic?
I am.
Okay.
Yes, and she is as well.
Okay, good. So check your local parish or diocese for marriage preparation programs. There's beautiful online marriage preparation programs you can take. One of the fun things that a lot of them offer are inventories where you just answer a bunch of questions and you get to really talk about things that you normally wouldn't and discover things about each other. One of them is the Focus program. Remember, I think that's like 175 questions. And that will reveal some of the issues that would otherwise come up later in the marriage. You can start tackling them right now. It is hard work, but it's also fun. And it's a way to really get to know each other. And it's a really good part of your discernment process before you actually get to the altar. Now, I'm going to use this opportunity, being a mom, and I have 3 boys. You know where marriage preparation starts? Tell me, Si, where does it start?
In the cradle.
In the cradle. When they're 2 years old, you help them carry the trash outside. You make your kids make your bed. Greg, do you get up every morning and immediately make your bed? Do you pay your bills on time? You don't have to answer this online. But do you do the hard
No, I want to hear the answers, Greg.
No, you don't. No. Do you do the hard work of being a man before thinking about the hard work of being a husband? Because that's where you're going to get ahead of the game. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Thank you so much.
Self-discipline, baby.
Why do you all of a sudden sound like Jordan Peterson?
I don't know, but I'm getting all excited about this topic now.
Yeah.
Make your bed. Do the chores. Finish your homework. Do the hard thing.
Yeah. Marriage is not an escape from the work of that you are assigned in this life. It's not an escape from it. It builds on it, and so you start it. You do that work.
Exactly, but the sad thing is, as parents in the last few decades, we've tried to avoid having our children have to do hard things and make it easy for them. So when they get into marriage, they're like, they don't know what to do.
But I have to say, Rose, and thank you, Greg, for the call. We did we chatted a little bit with Zach when he got back from his honeymoon here on the air. And one of the things we asked him about is if he had to do marriage prep. And he did not, and I really appreciated Zach's honesty on this, he did not turn his nose up at marriage prep. He said he was surprised at how helpful it was in getting them ready for marriage. And Catholic marriage prep, just like everything else, is not perfect. And I'm sure some people have a positive experience, some people a negative. But being open to doing those, getting the help, from people who've been through it, for example.
Right.
I think that's a good thing.
And back in the olden days, when there weren't that therapists and everything, when families lived closer, you went to mom or dad or grandma or Uncle Bill, and they sat you down and they told you what for, and they gave you the tips, and you got your marriage counseling inside the trusted family members.
Right, and they also gave you the confidence that you can do it. I always think I have this incredible gift in my life that my parents, stayed married, and now they're 65 years married or something. And that gives you a confidence. And I think a lot of young people are missing that confidence because they don't have those models of their grandparents did it, their parents did it, their aunts and uncles did it, and I can do it too.
Yeah. No, it's tough. I remember I saw 2 elderly women one time in a store, and a young pregnant lady walked by, and they said, well, she's going to have to learn the hard way. And I said to those total strange women, I go, well, you have a lot of wisdom to pass. Why don't you just share it with young people?
Uh-huh.
They're hungry for it. Nope, they got to do it on their own. And I was like, oh, I wanted to kill.
Yeah, because there's a lot of good-hearted young people who will listen and do want to learn and do want that wisdom. But
are we done
without
already?
Works, marriage is dead.
It is.
You've got to do the work, Rose.
And you know
I don't
what?
know if you know this.
The work is worth it.
It is worth it. Yeah, I'm glad that you said that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need to communicate that to young people as well. It is worth it, and God has a beautiful plan for you. Even in very, very difficult marriages, God has a beautiful plan for you.
Yes, He does.
Jimmy Akin's coming up. We're going to do open forum next hour. Your call's welcome, 888-318-7884. Check out everything Rose does over at rosesuite.com.
Thank you, Cy.
Rose, thank you. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll see you in a little bit.
Next time you come back, we're going to have you chat with some of our young Catholic Answers, people who are either preparing marriage or recently married.
About the ridiculous amount of money they spend on weddings.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I am Cy Kellett, your host. As promised, a little bonus Friday afternoon open forum. You can call and ask whatever you like. Jimmy Akin here to take your questions. 888-318-7884. Jimmy Akin, of course, is senior apologist here at Catholic Answers, and he knows probably more about dowsing than you do, because that was the show today, dowsing. That was what was on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World this morning. Hello, Jimmy Akin. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Cy Kellett. Happy to be here.
It's very so. The dowsing episode is out.
Well, the first of two, yes.
Oh,
so
it's a two-parter.
So this week we talked about what dowsing is, its history, the different ways it's done, the applications that people use it for. And Dr. Paul Smith also told us about some of his experiences dowsing, including in private life and also when he worked for the Defense Department's psychic spying program.
Oh, okay. And then what comes next week?
Next week, we talk about the faith perspective on dowsing, including what the Catholic Church has to say about it, which I was very surprised by, and also the scientific evidence, what scientific studies of dowsing have shown.
Okay. All right. A two-parter on dowsing. You can find it at mysterious.fm. And or you can just type in Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, and you will come to it, and you'll enjoy it. A constantly growing audience discovering it and finding out how much fun it is to examine the mysteries of the world from the faith perspective and from the perspective of reason. And I think that to me is the selling point. I mean, you are the selling point, Jimmy. But I think for a lot of people,
I think it's the fact we actually try to solve these mysteries using faith and reason.
Yeah, and without dismissing either of the perspectives. I think that's a great thing. You can call if you got a question. Anybody can call 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. It's open forum. Open forum means open to anyone. On anything, on any topic. 888-318-7884. Whenever Jimmy, I'm just in the habit. Whenever I hear any kind of mystery in the news, I always got to ask you about it. Is the I just need to know: is the core of the Earth having problems, or is it doing okay? Because I hear conflicting reports.
There is no core crisis.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Despite what you may have heard from some poets, the center can hold.
Oh, okay, all right. A William Butler Yeats reference.
Yeah, there's Bethlehem to be born at the moment that we know of, but there are scientists have, using seismological techniques, learned more about how the core is structured and how it behaves, and some of the findings were not expected, and so they've been a little surprised, but there is no crisis or anything like that happening.
Okay, all right, because I could not handle that if there was a problem with the core of the Earth right when we're being invaded by extraterrestrials and having to shoot them down. That
would be potentially problematic, unless it turned out the solution to the alien invasion was something we discovered from the core.
Yeah, and that would make a good movie. The number, again, 888-318-7884. And when we surprise you with Jimmy Akin like this and he's not on the schedule, that means that usually there's a better opportunity to get in, because often when it's on the schedule, then weeks in advance people plan, I'm going to call Jimmy on that day, so all the lines are lit up. We do have Anthony from Florida to start us out today. Anthony, watching on YouTube, thanks for the call. Anthony, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call. Big fan of Catholic Answers and Mysterious World.
Thank you.
I was wondering about claims that I've heard mostly on secular documentaries and such, that the writers of the New Testament purposefully made the Romans look good to, I guess, I don't know what for, but like, for example, making Pilate, making up the fact that Pilate washed his hands and making it seem like he didn't really have anything to do with the crucifixion. And I'm skeptical of that, but I was wondering if there was any evidence one way or the other, and if you had a take on that. Thanks.
Well, so if someone made this claim to me, I would say, okay, so what are your arguments? What's your evidence? The basic evidence we have is found in the New Testament. We know very little about Pilate from Roman sources. He's mentioned very briefly in some Roman sources, but we really don't have any information about him of substance from non-Christian sources. So we're primarily limited to what the Gospels tell us. And if you want to say, well, if you want to make a modest claim, like the evangelists shaped their narrative in a certain way, they colored it to, maybe make him look more favorable. There's a degree to which that could be true, depending on which facts get reported. For example, what we do know about Pilate, and the New Testament is quite clear in indicating he consented to the crucifixion. We know that Pilate, got in trouble with the Roman authorities later on. He was recalled from his governorship in AD 36, 3 years after the crucifixion, and then he was basically banished to France. So we know he wasn't viewed as the greatest guy. And if the evangelists had wanted, because they were writing after all of that happened, they could have just piled it on and said, and to show what a rotten guy he was, the Romans did this, that, and the other because of what Pilate did. And they didn't do that. In fact, they didn't even do something as simple as say he punished Jesus and later he got banished, which would be a way of making him look bad. So they definitely could have made him look worse, and they didn't choose to do that. They also could have made him look better. If they were making stuff up, they could have made up additional stuff to exculpate him even more. So it seems to me that it's just unprovable speculation. And if you want to say that there were any dramatic changes here, you can assert that they made stuff up, but what's your evidence for that? We don't have good evidence of them making up other stuff, so why would they make up stuff on this matter? In particular, why would they go out of their way to make a disgraced Roman governor look particularly good? I mean, he's already on the outs with the Romans, but none of the Gospels were written by AD 36, so he was already on the outs with the Roman authorities. Why would they go out of their way to make a bad guy look good? When if it's the Romans they're trying to please, Romans would not have a problem with a portrait of Pontius Pilate that made him look bad. Also, the principal audience for the Gospels was not Romans. It was Greeks, as illustrated by the fact they're written in Greek rather than Latin. So it was Greek speakers who were the primary audience for the Gospel. Had mixed attitudes towards Romans. Some Greek speakers liked the Romans, some didn't, but there's no particular motive there. So I'm not seeing a good motive, and the claim seems inconsistent with the astonishing accuracy that we can demonstrate on the Gospels for other matters. So I'm not particularly impressed by the claim.
Anthony, you stayed with us. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's a very typical on-point answer from Jimmy Akin. Much appreciated.
All right. Well, thank you. It was a very on-point question.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin. One line open if you want to fill it up, 888-318-7884.
Miss a show? Make sure to catch up by downloading the podcast, available online at Catholic.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
He is honored by the Church as a saint with the title of the Seraphic Doctor.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
One of the greatest theologians and Franciscan mystics in church history, Bonaventure also wrote a biography of St. Francis that was commissioned by the Franciscans themselves. It took a saint and true mystic to understand a true saint and mystic. He died in 1274.
To find out more, visit EWTN.com and click on Catholicism.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Jimmy Akin here with us. for an open forum this hour. And still one line open if you want to get your question in. Perfect time to do it. 888-318-7884, 888-31-TRUTH. We're going to Boise, Idaho. Despite that being don't tell me, intervocalic S.
Intervocalic S.
Intervocalic S. Intervocalic S. It's pronounced with the S sound. Mary in Boise, Idaho, listening on Salt and Light Radio. We're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, Jimmy. Hi, Cy. And well done, Cy, on your Boise pronunciation. I was wondering...
I appreciate that, Mary. Thanks.
When I say the Divine Chaplet for my relative, each on their birthday, I'll say it for them like a birthday present. And if I include other people, is the amount of grace they receive reduced, or should I just concentrate on them?
Okay, it's an interesting question. It's not one that the church has a teaching on, so we're beyond the realm of doctrine and into the realm of theology, which is a matter of opinion. Theology is the attempt to understand God based on what he's revealed to us with divine revelation. And you could ask this question of, is it a zero-sum game? Where if I'm asking God to help multiple, like say I'm praying for two people instead of one, will God give each person only half of the help that he would give if I was praying for just one person? So it's a zero-sum game. If you include extra people, it diminishes the effect for all of them. And we do find some zero-sum game situations here in this life. There are situations where you can't help everybody, and helping one person means choosing another. It means helping someone else. Means helping that person rather than someone else, and that's because we humans have limited resources. You know, if I'm donating to the poor and I only have $100 to donate, well, I could give one person $100, but I can't give them all $100. I could give them all $1, and so trying to help 100 people would reduce the amount of money I can give each person. But the reason we're subject to that is because we have limited resources. Here's the thing. God does not have limited resources. So it would be a matter of God's choice how much help he decides to give someone in response to a prayer. Because he doesn't have resource limitations, he can help all people as much as he chooses. So that means we should consider the character of God. Cy Kellett, what's God's highest priority for human beings? And if you need a help, think about the greatest two commandments. What does God want most from us?
Yeah, that we love him and that we love each other.
Right. So love is God's highest priority. And by praying for more than just one person, you are being loving. And in fact, praying for people other than immediate family members is loving in a notable way. As Jesus pointed out in the Sermon on the Mount, even the pagans, will take care for those who are close to them. They love those who love them. But we're called to love other people, including strangers and complete enemies. So we're actually doing what God wants by being loving and not just focusing on those who are the closest to us. Now, he wants us to focus on those who are close to us because he put them close to us, and we have a responsibility toward each other. But he wants us to go beyond that and care about other people as well. So, Mary, by praying for other people, you're actually doing what God wants, and he is, in principle at least, and he hasn't said, I'm going to cut down the grace if you pray for more than one person, and he has no need to cut down the grace since he doesn't have limited resources. So on balance, I would say that I would expect this not to be a zero-sum game, but one where God wouldn't want us to worry about are we decreasing the help for one person by praying for more than one. God wants us to pray for more than one, so just do that.
What do you think, Mary?
That sounds great. As I was praying for my aunt today, I passed a cemetery, and so naturally, and I'm thinking, and for all of those interned in the cemetery. And then I thought, golly, did I just jip Aunt Mary? So it sounds like if anything, I did a good thing. So thank you for your answer. That makes a lot of sense.
Mary, the praying for the dead is a very good thing. And so thank you very much for the question and for your approval of my pronunciation. I really appreciate that. Jimmy Akin, our guest this hour, open forum. On we go to Atlanta, Georgia. John, listening on The Quest, the great, big, beautiful Catholic radio station in Atlanta. John, go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Thank you kindly. Hey, Jimmy, I heard someone posit on EWTN within the last month that they were thinking that as our understanding of the universe evolves, that the Earth may in fact be at the center of the universe. And I'm figuring you're the guy that could answer that question.
Well, okay, so I don't know who this was, and I didn't hear what they said, so I can't comment directly. But on the general issue of is it possible that we could make scientific discoveries that would indicate that the Earth, or the solar system at least, is at the center of the universe, it's not logically impossible. But it's very hard to see how that would happen because we cannot see the edge of the universe. And if you can't see the edge of a space, you can't determine where its geographical center is. It's like if you're standing, let's say you go to a baseball stadium, or let's say someone kidnaps you and puts a hood over your head and takes you to, let's make it a basketball arena. They take you to a big, huge, hulking basketball arena. They put you somewhere on the floor of the basketball court, and they turn out the lights. And all you've got is like a little match to illuminate all that space with. Well, with a little match, you're not going to be able to see the edges of the arena that you're in. And consequently, you're not going to be able to determine where the geographical center of the arena is, and therefore you're never going to be able to determine whether you're at the center unless something changes that allows you to see the edge. Well, right now, we, even using the oldest light in the universe, which dates from about 300,000 years after the Big Bang, when the density of the universe decreased to the point that light could flow freely, we cannot see an edge. And so because we can't see an edge, we don't know how big the universe, we don't even know how big the universe is. Evidence would indicate, based on its flatness, that it's at least 50 times bigger than what we can see. But we cannot see an edge to it, and we have no prospects in the near future or the foreseeable future of being able to see its edge. And as long as we can't see its edge, we can't determine where the center is, and therefore we would have no way of establishing that the Earth is at the center. The reason that people used to think that the Earth was at the center is because they used to think they could see the edge. They thought that was the sphere of fixed stars. It seemed to them that all of the stars, except for the planets, were a fixed distance from Earth, and they didn't move around with respect to each other, unlike the planets. And they thought there was this shell around the Earth that all of the fixed stars were on. And based on that, you could estimate that the Earth would be at the center of that shell. But we now know that the crystal shell model of the universe is not accurate, and the stars are in fact varying distances from Earth, and we can't see an edge, so we can't establish a center.
All righty. Well, thank you, sir. I was curious when I heard that. It stuck in my head, and I knew you were the man to ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks very much. 50 times larger. That is a big universe.
Yep.
Well, not hard for God to make that.
Based on the flatness, it would seem to be like 50 times larger than what we can see.
Holy smoke. It's like, that's big. Like I said, I don't know. I was going to have an analogy, but then I realized my analogy was dumb, so I just quit it halfway. In Bryce in San Jose, California, listening on Catholic.com. That's our website. Bryce, thanks for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
All right. Well, thank you, Cy. Jimmy, I recently saw your Mysterious World episode on the Big Bang, and it was super cool. I had to listen to it a couple times because it's kind of complicated. But that wasn't your fault. That was my brain's fault.
The universe's fault.
But
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and my question is, I feel, without sounding arrogant, I feel pretty strong in the faith and in my knowledge of Catholic theology. But there are certain cases where I interact with non-Christians. Like, so for example, I'm doing a Bible study with this Jehovah's Witness gentleman, and there's this college club that does Shabbat dinners that I sometimes go with my friends to. And because I'm secure in my faith and I am prudent in sharing my faith appropriately and when it seems right, I also still want to be careful that I don't commit scandal and I don't engage in false religion. So what would be some good pointers there, especially on doing prayers with people of other religions?
Well, so it's possible to pray with someone even if they don't believe everything that you do, as long as what you're praying is not inconsistent with the Christian faith. In the case of going to these Shabbat dinners, well, St. Paul himself and the other apostles, they went to synagogues. You know, they attended synagogues, they prayed in the synagogues, they participated in the synagogue services, and then they would also talk about Jesus. So I don't see any, in principle, problem there. I would be more concerned with the Jehovah's Witnesses you mentioned, because Jehovah's Witnesses, even though they're monotheists, they claim to be Christians, and in fact, they're not. They don't have a valid baptism, and their beliefs about Jesus are very problematic, as are other beliefs they hold. Now, I could see participating in a Bible study with a Jehovah's Witness for purposes of evangelizing the Jehovah's Witness, but I wouldn't participate in such an event for any other reason. There are perfectly good Catholic Bible studies and other Christian Bible studies that do not have the problems that Jehovah's Witness Bible studies will have, because they're going to be viewing everything through a very strange and inaccurate lens provided by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. So there are a lot better and safer ways to learn. The only reason I would consider going to a Jehovah's Witness Bible study would be to evangelize the Jehovah's Witness.
Yes, and that is my goal there. So yes.
Yeah, well then, as long as you wouldn't be causing scandal unless you're talking about this and saying, "Oh, I'm learning so much from this JW Bible study I'm going to," and making it sound like a good thing. But as long as the people who are aware of the Bible study understand why you're there, then it's not causing scandal.
Okay. And then what about prayer with them? So if they open up with a prayer and they open up and they, pray to Jehovah, and for me, I would understand Jehovah as a potentially accurate, maybe not so accurate translation of Yahweh. So it's like, in a sense, they are praying to God, but they're doing it with a false understanding. Should I ask to not be in part of those prayers, or would those prayers be licit for me to?
Well, what are they What are they asking you to do? I mean, what do you do when they start one of these prayers? Do you just sit there and passively, or do they want you to participate verbally, or what?
Well, they just say, we'll do a quick prayer, and then they'll lead the prayer, and there won't be anything explicit in it. So they won't say anything like, "Oh, we also know Jesus isn't God." There's not anything explicitly there that would be contrary to my faith. There's just probably, there's probably plenty of implicit stuff that's in a lot of those prayers that would be faulty. And so I would probably pray along with them. I might actually do the sign of the cross before and after it. So
they'll love that.
Yeah. So would it be better for me to just ask for us to do maybe separate prayers before that? They're very accommodating. So should I ask to do that instead of praying alongside them as they do a prayer?
Well, okay, so there is a Jehovah, there is a Yahweh. He is the creator of the universe, and he knows when they're talking to him, even if they don't recognize Jesus as also Jehovah. Jehovah does know that they're talking to him. So it is a prayer, and if they're not saying anything wrong in the context of that prayer, then there's nothing wrong with you agreeing with that prayer. However, it could be somewhat confusing, and so, including for them. And so my inclination would be, if they say, let's do a quick prayer, my inclination would be to just sit there and let them make the prayer and then move on from that. I can't say that it's wrong to say amen or something to a prayer that's otherwise true as it's phrased, but it could be a little confusing.
Bryce, thank you. You can probably hear the music. That means we've got to take this break. We will take the break and be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin. 888-318-7884.
Want to know more about the origins of the Catholic Church? Joe Heschmeyer explores the beginnings of Christianity. In the early church was the Catholic Church. Joe digs deep into the words and actions of those who lived right after the apostles to refute anti-Catholic claims of how the faith was lived back then. Order your copy of The Early Church Was the Catholic Church today at shop.catholic.com or get it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
If you're not a Bible scholar, the full message of how the Sunday Mass readings fit together can be tough to comprehend. Apologist Carlo Broussard is here to help. Join Carlo every Friday for the Sunday Catholic Word podcast. In each episode, he unpacks the scripture readings for that Sunday and brings them all together so you can better understand and defend the faith. Visit SundayCatholicWord.com to subscribe. That's SundayCatholicWord.com.
What if the voice of your deepest doubts about Catholicism rose up in the form of a human being and challenged you to defend your most foundational beliefs? That's the task apologist Trent Horn took upon himself in his new book, Devil's Advocate, a dialogue with his own best objections against the faith that he professes and defends. You can stand up against your doubts, and Trent will show you how. Pick up your copy of Devil's Advocate today at shop.catholic.com or at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
As a child, the great theologian Thomas Aquinas asked, "What is God?" Best-selling author Kevin Vost's new book follows the mature thought of Aquinas in answering that question. In clear and approachable fashion, What is God examines God's attributes and considers questions about him that have vexed mankind for centuries. Order your copy of What is God today at shop.catholic.com or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Tomorrow on More to Life, the life you were meant to live.
We'll look at how the theology of the body can help you live a more abundant life.
That's tomorrow on More to Life, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central on EWTN Radio.
Now back to Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. The new book, The Heart of the Gospel, on the Beatitudes. It's called Heart of the Gospel, How the Beatitudes Show Us God's Plan to Happiness. It's brand new, out now from Catholic Answers Press. The author is our friend, who you have heard on this program, Sebastian Walsh, the Norbertine priest, Sebastian Walsh. And it's a lovely book and would make a very fine book for Lenten meditation and reflection. And therefore, it is 20% off right now at shop.catholic.com. Use the promo code BLESSED. When you check out at shop.catholic.com. The word blessed will get you 20% off. If you want to get it in bulk, maybe share it with your Bible study or your group or your class or your RCA group or whatever, you can get them for $3 a copy when you buy them in bulk at shop.catholic.com. Jimmy Akin, our guest. Lots of folks on the line. A couple lines open if you want to call. 888-318-7884 for open forum. Jim in Virginia is next, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Jim, thank you for the call. Go ahead with the question.
Hey, appreciate it. It's a great program. I always love it.
Thank you.
My question is, first of all, I grew up in the Catholic home, went to Catholic school up through 8th grade. But something happened recently. I believe in all the sacraments, and I go to confession, not often enough, but I still go. And something
good.
recently happened. Oh, yeah, no, it's great. And you do feel better after you're in it. But what happened somehow my wife came up in the conversation. I like to do the face-to-face thing, and somehow it got to the discussion that we didn't get married in the Catholic Church because she's an agnostic, and she's Lutheran by upbringing, but agnostic, and for a variety of reasons. And he said, well, that's not good. And I was like, well, that's what it is. And she's a lovely person, a nurse, saves lives, the whole thing, emergency room. And we're older. And he said, well, look, you got to get her to get married in the church. And I said, that's probably not going to happen, at least not today. And he said, well, are you trying? I said, I do it by example. I don't talk to her about it. She doesn't want to be lectured. If she sees my example is good, I said, if my example is good, she'll come. If not, then she doesn't. And he said, well, you need to talk to her. I said, Father, you're not married to a woman, okay? It doesn't work that way. Anyway, he said, I'm not going to give you the absolution, and so you can go. And so I left. But it always bothered me because I always thought reconciliation was a chance to throw it all out there. That seemed like a very minor problem, but I don't know, it still bugs me. And I've been to confession since, but I did learn a lesson. Don't bring up your wife.
So what would you like from Jimmy?
It seems petty to me, and it seemed argumentative rather than let's put a problem on the table. Let's try to solve it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that you had the experience. I understand how wrenching it can be. And denying someone absolution is not something to be done lightly. Having said that, it is something that has to be done sometimes because Jesus, in commissioning the sacrament of reconciliation, he told the disciples, this is in John chapter 21, if you want to look it up, but he told the disciples, whoever sins you forgive, they are forgiven. Whoever sins you retain, they are retained. And so he indicated that the disciples need to make a decision about whether they're to either forgive a sin or retain a sin, meaning not forgive it. And so it's not the case that in confession we say anything and it's guaranteed that we're going to be forgiven no matter what, because after reflecting on this and discerning it, well, why would a priest deny someone absolution? Why could that be rational? Because Jesus indicates it can be rational. He told them to do one or the other. They've got to make a choice. So on what rational basis could they make that choice? And the answer that the church has discerned is based on whether or not the person has repented of the sin. So if during the course of a confession, a priest becomes aware that a penitent is committing a sin and they are completely they're not repentant of it, they're not taking steps to deal with it in their life, then the priest may have to deny them absolution. And this particular circumstance that you've mentioned is the only one that I'm aware of where this happens with any kind of frequency, because there are a lot of people who get married outside the Catholic Church. And in fact, this is something that happened with me. Back before I was Catholic, I married a woman who temporarily was identifying herself as an Anglican, but then as soon as we got married, she went back to the Catholic Church, and she went to confession, and I was at home asleep. It was like a Sunday morning or something, and my church time was later, and I woke up, and she's sitting on the bed, and she's kind of cross because she had just come from confession, and the priest had refused to give her absolution. And the reason was because I had insisted as a non-Catholic that we have a non-Catholic wedding, and we had not gotten a dispensation from the church to have a non-Catholic wedding. The situation is like that of a person who's, let's say, the citizen of a state. Like here, Jim, you're in Virginia. So as a citizen of Virginia, if you want to get married, you need to observe the laws of Virginia, like get a marriage license and go before a qualified registrar of marriages and have a service and have witnesses and things like that. You need to observe the laws of the state of Virginia in order to get validly married in Virginia. Well, the same thing is true for Catholics in the Catholic Church. If you're a Catholic, the Catholic Church has certain laws regarding how it regulates marriages. And if you want to get validly married in the church, you need to observe those laws as a Catholic. Either that, or you need to get a dispensation so that you don't have those laws that are applying to you. Now, if you're a citizen of Virginia and you don't follow the laws of the state of Virginia for its citizens, and let's say it's required that you take out a marriage license and you don't do that. You just have a private ceremony somewhere with no marriage license. Well, Virginia is going to look at that situation and say, I'm sorry, but you're not married. And in the same way, if a Catholic gets married outside of the Catholic Church without a dispensation for a non-Catholic wedding, the Catholic Church is going to look at that in the same way and say, I'm sorry, but you're not married. Even if you think you are and in good conscience believed that you were and have lived together for a long time, the ceremony actually didn't take. And so that's a situation that needs to get fixed. And that's what happened in my case. Even though I wasn't a Catholic, and I didn't see the need to have another wedding, my wife and I eventually did. And it was a very simple affair. This is commonly this is called having your marriage blessed. Officially, it's known as having a convalidation. But it was a really super simple ceremony. It took like 5 minutes. It was me, my wife, the priest, and 2 witnesses. We did it like in 5 minutes after another service. It was no big deal. We didn't have to throw a big party. We didn't have to do any of that stuff. We just needed to re-exchange matrimonial consent for each other to be married to each other in the right way. And we did that, and it was no problem. Now, in the case of this priest who denied you absolution, I can't speak to did he do it in the best way. He may well not have. But if he may have been too abrupt, he may not have been pastoral enough, but if you communicated to him that you're not in a situation where you would be validly married, he's going to assume you're continuing to have marital relations with your wife, and those marital relations would be objectively sinful. And so it was natural for him to urge you to try to address the situation. And that was actually, he's trying to help you there. He's trying to help you get into a marital state that's appropriate and that conforms with God's will. And if you said, I'm not interested in doing that, Father, then he didn't have much choice but to say, well, then I'm afraid I can't absolve you for right now. Now, there are ways of addressing this, and I want to be encouraging to you because I think they're actually I think the situation likely can be addressed very easily. I mean, of course, one option is to live as brother and sister and not have sex. But that's not an option for most people. They want to continue to have marital relations, and the logical thing to do at that point is to simply have your marriage blessed or convalidated. And that does mean talking to your wife about it. And I think there are very easy ways to do that could make this not as big of a problem as you're imagining. If it were me in this situation, and this is the flip side of what actually happened in my life because I was the non-Catholic partner, but if I were the Catholic partner, I would go to my spouse and say, honey, I want you to understand this situation. This has come up. It turns out that in the eyes of the Catholic Church, we're not actually married. We've loved each other for years and we've been with each other for years, but there was a problem with our marriage because we didn't follow the rules that I was obliged to as a Catholic, and it affected our marriage ceremony, just like if we didn't follow the rules of the state we live in, it could affect our marriage ceremony. So this doesn't say anything about my love for you or our love for each other. We still obviously love each other, and it will help me live my life as a Catholic if we can get remarried. You don't have to think that's the greatest idea ever, but I would really appreciate it if, out of love for me, you would consider having this very simple ceremony. It's not a big deal. It takes 5 minutes. And it's even a chance for us to reaffirm our love for each other, because lots of people, they have second weddings where they repeat their vows as a sign of their love for each other. And this would be exactly that. This would be a way that we can reaffirm how much we love each other and reaffirm our commitment to each other. And it also would help me be able to live my conscience and my faith as a Catholic. And I would really appreciate it if you would be willing to do that out of love.
And Jim, I hope that that's helpful to you. You're certainly welcome to call back if there are follow-up questions that you've got. We have to take a break, however, and so I will do that, and we'll be right back with more Open Forum with Jimmy Akin on Catholic Answers Live.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
We have a big problem. Our culture is dying, and souls are in danger of being lost. The answer is conversion to Jesus Christ in His church. St. Paul Street Evangelization is a Catholic organization, and we have hundreds of teams spreading the good news throughout the country. But we need your help. The harvest is great, but the laborers are few. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Save the date. Saturday, August 26th is the day, and Birmingham, Alabama is the place for the 2023 EWTN Family Celebration. We're celebrating Mother Angelica's love for the Eucharist, and join us to mark the centennial year of Mother's birth. Make your plans now to attend this free event. More details coming soon at our Family Celebration webpage, EWTN.com/Family Celebration.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Jimmy Akin, our guest, and it is Open Forum. Your calls are welcome. There's 3 folks on the line. Maybe we might be able to do 4 or 5. I don't know. We never know until we get into the calls. But if you want to get on the line right now, we might be able to get you on before the end of the hour. 888-318-7884. Peter in New York is next, listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Peter, thank you for the call. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hey, guys, how are you? I have a question. Oftentimes we think a lot about when the end times are coming, when Christ will return. But lately I've been wondering if there's any theology of the Catholic Church that addresses the question of why Christ came into the world when He did.
Okay. Well, there's certainly been theological speculation on it, which is not the same thing as church teaching, but there has been theological speculation on it. In fact, all the way back to the beginning, you had people asking, well, okay, if this Jesus, the Messiah of yours, is true, why did He just show up now? And so this is actually a question that Christians have been answering for the last 2,000 years. And one of the most common answers in general terms is that God sent Jesus now because the time was right. The first century was a period in which you had the Roman Empire spread across much of the known world. And even though the Romans were not always the best governors, they did bring a kind of order to the situation. They built roads that people could travel on. Travel was much easier and safer. There was a universal language in the West. It happened to be Greek rather than Latin for historical reasons, but people in around Europe, they tended to have Greek at least as a second language. So not only was transportation easier, not only was it easier to get to the people, but once you got there, if you knew Greek, you could talk to them. And so communication was also easier. And because of the power of the Roman Empire, there was a great reduction in the number of wars and conflicts. There were some, particularly on the border of the empire, but if you weren't going to the border, you could travel in relatively peaceful circumstances around inside of it. And so it would make sense that that God would send his son in an age in which you have a relatively peaceful condition with easy access to travel and easy communication, so you can preach the message of his son. And that would be a good time to send his son. And so that's part of the explanation that early Christians offered for why Christ came now.
That's fascinating. I appreciate that. I never would have guessed any of those things.
Oh, well, I'm glad. You sound like a satisfied customer, so thank you, Peter. And I hope maybe we'll talk to you again. I hope you'll call again sometime.
Just to expand on that just ever so slightly, it's even possible to expand into broader, like why this period of history, like why not send Jesus in the Neolithic?
Yeah.
Before after the invention of agriculture, but before the invention of writing. Well, having writing is a great way to be able to preserve God's revelation and communicate it to other people. So it would make sense for God to send his son along with a body of written information about his son to testify to his son and to help people explain and understand the faith of his son. And that would put the period in which Jesus would be born after the invention of writing, which the earliest use of writing that we know about was a little before 3000 BC. The Hebrews became literate about 1000 BC, but based on the invention of writing, you could also predict it's appropriate at least for God to send his son during the written age as well.
Peter, thanks. What a cool and interesting question. I'm going to go to Liv now up in Canada, listening on Catholic.com. Liv, we're glad you're here. Go ahead with your question for Jimmy.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I'm just curious about what causes Jesus' different reactions in the 4th and 8th stations in the way of the cross. So, why are Mary's and the women of Jerusalem's sorrow for Jesus' suffering treated differently?
Okay, so there's no single definitive version of the way of the cross. The way of the cross developed in the Middle Ages after pilgrims started returning from the Holy Land, and they would describe the Via Dolorosa, the road of sorrows in Jerusalem, which is people who visit Jerusalem, Christian pilgrims who visit Jerusalem, walk the Via Dolorosa today, and they see, places where various things happened, where the crucifixion was and so forth. And when they came back from their pilgrimages, they would want to communicate what they had seen to other people. And since many people could not go on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land because travel was difficult, certainly by modern standards, they set up little replicas of the Via Dolorosa locally, so that you could, even though you couldn't go to Jerusalem and walk the actual Via Dolorosa, you could walk the replica of it in your own town, in your own parish, and eventually, over the course of some period of time, the stations solidified, and they weren't all the same originally, but they eventually solidified, and even today, though, there are variations of exactly what happens at each station. Some people associate scriptural texts with the station, so you read a particular scripture. And so really all the 4th station is Jesus meets his mother. It doesn't tell us anything about his reaction there in the minimal definitive form of what the stations are, but a version of the stations that you've encountered, Liv, may go further than just Jesus meets his mother and it may convey Jesus having a particular attitude. Similarly, the 8th station is literally just Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. But in this case, there is a very notable verse in the Gospels. It's in the Gospel of Luke that reflects this event, and in this verse, Jesus tells the women of Jerusalem not to weep for him, but to weep for themselves, because there's going to be a very violent, dangerous time coming on them. And consequently, it would be very natural for people to attach that verse to the 8th station of the cross in many different versions of it. But Jesus meeting his mother, except at the cross itself, is not in Scripture. And so this is something extra scriptural, and people will have to exercise more imagination to imagine what would have happened when Jesus met his mother. And so that may account for the variation that you're seeing. We have a clear scriptural statement about Jesus talking to the women of Jerusalem, but we don't have a clear statement about Jesus meeting and talking to his mother in Scripture, and so there's more flexibility in terms of how people might imagine that event.
And I do hope that was helpful to you, Liv. I'm going to keep going because there are still a couple of calls on for Jimmy and John in Coatesville, Pennsylvania, listening on Holy Spirit Radio. If you can ask your question kind of quickly, that will give Jimmy enough time to answer.
All right, thank you. Psalm 110, line 7, he shall drink from the stream by the wayside, and therefore he shall lift up his head. What does that mean, he shall lift up his head?
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked about that part of the verse, because the Hebrew meaning of the first part of the verse about drinking from the brook is actually uncertain, and translators are guessing that that's what it means. But he will lift up his head means basically, so the Hebrews had an association of height and goodness. And so, like, if someone has had a lot of success, they're going to be perked up, they're going to be standing tall. And basically, this psalm, Psalm 110, is a royal psalm talking about how God is going to help the King of Jerusalem, and by extension, the Messiah. But it's in its immediate context, it's about God helping the King of Jerusalem, and he's going to give the King of Jerusalem a lot of success. And saying he will lift up his head, assuming that's talking about the king and not God himself, that would mean effectively the king is going to be standing tall. He's going to raise his head high. And that's what that would mean. He's going to be successful and happy and lifted up.
Does that make sense to you?
Okay. Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very, very much. I think I can get Jack, if you'll, in Columbus, just ask your question as quick as you can. We'll see if we can get Jimmy to give you an answer.
Oh, okay. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to know if Mary Magdalene was the same Mary as the sister of Martha.
Okay, Jimmy?
Okay, the standard scholarly opinion is no. The Mary Magdalene is known as Mary Magdalene or Mary of Magdala. Magdala was a place location, and that would suggest, because women tended to be named based on their relatives in Jewish society, that would tend to indicate that Mary Magdalene did not have any male relatives like a husband or a father that she could be called after. And that's why she was known after a place, Magdala. On the other hand, Mary, the sister of Martha and the sister of Lazarus, has relatives, including a male relative, Lazarus. And the fact she's called Mary, the sister of Martha, or Mary, the sister of Lazarus, would suggest that she is a different person because she's known after her relatives instead of being known after a place.
Jack, thank you very much for getting that question out so quickly so that we were able to get an answer from Jimmy Akin. I hope that I let you get out everything you wanted to get out, but if not, I apologize. Jimmy Akin
Call back.
Yeah, call back another time. Jimmy Akin's been our guest. There's a new episode each Friday, so the brand new episode today on Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Check it out at mysterious.fm or just search Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Jimmy, thanks very much. I appreciate you coming in and helping us out on this Friday afternoon.
My pleasure.
And that will do it for us. Thanks for being with us this whole week. We'll see you again on Monday, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.